This conference will now be recorded.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to True Talks with Project Managers. I'm Marina Prasik, President of PMI Southern Maryland chapter. And tonight we are having our fourth episode with the subject of why projects fail. We'll be meeting our host, Kendall Lott, very soon, and our guests. We have Carl Pritchard and Tom Gray. A couple logistics before we get started. So during the show, just to make this very pleasant for everybody, since we are recording this session, please turn off your cameras and turn on only the option for active cameras. So you'll be able to see only the people that are speaking at that time. Use the chat for questions. So we don't want you to wait. If you think about the questions, use the chat. And we'll be monitoring the chat. We'll have Harry, our vice president. Harry, you want to turn on your camera? You're on mute, Harry. We are missing the sound.
Oh. Hello.
There we go. We have Harry who will be monitoring the chat. So we'll be making sure that we capture your questions as we go. After the show, look out for your one PDU card that you'll be receiving. So this is an educational session. It qualifies for PDUs. We'll be sending around the survey because we do appreciate your feedback. We are driving to always improve this talk show, and you can access also this talk show online. It will be available for you after the meeting. And now, without further ado, I'm going to call our host, the host of also PM Point of View, Kendall Lott. Hi, Kendall.
Hey there. Hi, Marina. Yeah, and there's Harry. I hear Harry. Thanks for having me on here again tonight, and welcome everybody. Whoa, it just changed on me, and we have so many initials up here. I'm going to take the initials as smiling faces. Everyone smiling? Yeah. Did summer just happen to everyone this morning? Because it did to me. How about you, Marina?
Yes.
Out of nowhere. Well, we have an interesting topic here tonight, and one of the things I do want to highlight to folks is do put in your questions. That is helpful. We were trying to do it in some different ways, and we had some requests from people that we include questions as we move through. So if you get a question, we'll try and put it in the flow of our guest here tonight. But we are looking for questions. We won't just necessarily set aside just at the end or something. We'll take them when we can as you send them in. No questions means no answers. Now, of course, I have workers outside here now. But to get some good answers, we got to have some questions. And speaking to the whole failure topic, we also have made adjustments in that survey you mentioned, Marina. You and I have talked about them a couple of times. So when you have suggestions like that my lighting is not very good, we'll listen. And we have actually made adjustments to things here on their show for us. So thanks for having us, and I'm glad there's so many, as I said, letters popping up here. It's a great peanut gallery we have here. So Marina, question for you. What made you pick this topic? We've covered a number of different topics since January. I remember it was cold, and now we are here in the sweaty times of summer almost. Why project failure? How are things at work, Marina?
Well, things at work are great, but I think why project fails. We talk about, I think you and I were, and Harry, we were talking about risk management. And there was a lot of that, the mitigation going on through the year. And as we started talking about the risk and mitigation strategies, well, of course, we had to pick why projects fail, because that's basically had the result of a very, catastrophic risk becoming real.
Wait, you think this year was different than other years? Wow, I must have missed something.
I must be the only one to think that.
Well, we're going to get to have some fun because one of the things that we look forward to, I'm already seeing many podcast writers, journalists, and discussions about what happens when this pandemic and our lockdowns end. What is it like to go back? And what is it because some things change, some things don't? What's reversion to the mean? What does normalcy look like? And what does that do to set us up for some failures? Kind of interesting question. We are all living the social experiment now, but with that, let's get on with some experts that are not us that handle chapter stuff. And we're going to move on to some experts. So I will talk to you later. Thanks for queuing us up, Marina. So with that, I'm going to bring up our very first person who, interestingly enough, is probably dialing in from a car. So we may have some interesting scenery that we'll get a chance to watch. So if you don't learn anything else tonight, you may get to see some greenery. We have with us Tom Gray. Where is Tom? Tom, come to the stage, sir. I know he's out there. I saw him before. Yep, he's still logged on, still fighting for his camera and his microphone.
Hey, Kendall. Hi.
I can hear you.
How you doing, Kendall?
Gotcha, man. Gotcha. Are you okay?
How you doing, Kendall?
Can you hear me? Did I lose him?
Nope, you didn't lose me. I'm right on the fringe, sitting in a parking lot on the fringe of cell service.
Oh,
trying to do what I can here. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing well. I'm not having to walk around in the sweaty hot heat. It's going to get worse. That's why I guess I'm glad we got you in on May. So let me tell you about Tom here, first of all. So he's a change manager, and he's been in PMI, doing the PMI things. Look at that. That's a PMI face. Everybody can recognize the PMI leader when they see one. Author, blogger, cross-country peddler. I thought I was the mess by walking across the Appalachian Trail. He actually rode across the country on a bicycle, but he likes to be known as a sports announcer and a goalkeeper. So sports announcer, 20 years of experience with projects. So what I'm dying to know is, of all those many things you do in your biography, which includes a lot with motorsports, I noticed, right? What's the most interesting use of your time? For you.
You'll like this one, sign painting.
What was sign
Yeah,
painting?
I've been sign painting 45 years.
Well,
Painting, signing the old rush and actually creating signs.
Unbelievable. And now, what kind of signs are these? Oh, I lost him.
Well, think of old hand-painted truck lettering. Think in terms of truck lettering, small signage, just custom painted stuff, drag race cars, things like that.
Well,
Got my attention when I was in high school, and I've stayed with it ever since.
Well, I'm gonna let everyone know that you said you've got 2 books that you're in the process of writing. One of them, and they clearly go very well together. One is on sign painting, and the other one is on leadership. So I guess there must be an affinity in there somewhere.
Yeah, there's a little bit of a connection there, but it's really, the left side, right side of the brain. My, the one side of me is analytical and the other one is artistic. So I've got to feed both of those parts of the brain. And the plan is I'm about halfway through with the sign painting book. Plan to have it done by the end of the summer. It's probably going to be the end of the year. The next book on leadership is going to encompass project management, change management, leadership, and it's based on 100 articles that I wrote on LinkedIn, and it's the compilation of all those articles into one or more freestanding books.
Great. So we can get it for free on LinkedIn, or we can buy the book. It sounds like an NFT about to happen here. I love it.
Yeah, and anyone who's interested in getting a little bit of insight into them can go look me up on LinkedIn and check on some of the articles that are already there. They'll get cleaned up a bit and then repurposed into the book. So I'm leveraging, the whole point was a couple years worth of writing on LinkedIn becomes something a little bit more united as a single product.
Well, let's get to it, because I'm glad you mentioned LinkedIn. When I went and looked at your LinkedIn profile, it says that you like daunting challenges. It's all about the challenges for you, and that it seems can be consistent with the things that you've shown, that you've done turnarounds and some improvement, both in the PMI space as well as in your professional paid for space. So I had a question for you. When you see that in hindsight, you're reflecting that, that's great, but let's get a little predictive here. Give us, like, if you had to pick a rule or a set of rules, when you peer into an organization, as you are introduced to it, as you get exposed to it, be it a PMI, be it a consulting gig, what do you first see that is indicative of impending project failures? Like, this organization gonna have problem. What's one of the first things that jumps out? Tell me the signs, sir.
I think the first sign is their willingness to jump outside of their comfort zone and to do things that they haven't done before. Just to throw away the rule book and really dive into the problem and solve it without any boundaries. If they're not willing to do that, then they're gonna be handcuffed to their old practices.
How do you know that's happening? What's your signal when we're all sitting in organizations? What's the signal that says we're even willing to do it?
It's amazing how people will straight up tell you that that's not how we do it. We've never done it that way. Or you can just tell by the attitude that there's a lack of excitement about what's going on, and because they don't have that excitement, they just take the approach that, you know what, it's gonna make it or it's not, and I can't change it. When they really can. Even one person can impact a big project.
That sounds like agency. Do you end up talking to people as individuals, or, I'm coming from a project management perspective, I often want to know, what is your process? How does it work? Is that the wrong question to begin with?
No, I think the process and how they work is important, but it's also what are they willing to step up to? What are they willing to say, I want to succeed, I want this project to succeed, and I'm not as interested in what the rules are as much as I am of accomplishing that goal. Then they could fall back on processes afterwards, but they've got to have that desire.
So you're into the individual at the motivation and desire level. What is the role then of, it sounds like from a project perspective, then you're linking it to how the humans are choosing to interact. I mean, is this like human error problem that causes most of our projects to fail? Or is it, because here, I'll tell you why. What PMI tells us a lot, and is validated, we hear, is that it's always about stakeholder, specifically executive buy-in, stakeholder engagement. They always say that like it's a magical thing. Like, well, if you get executive buy-in, you're good to go. And I'm always like, well, doesn't that beg the question? How does one get there? So you seem to be placing it at the motivational or human. I mean, I don't know. Is this a human error problem or a human motivation problem?
Well, I think in a good part of it is, but I think as you mentioned, that stakeholder engagement is absolutely critical. Most of the projects that I've been involved with lack executive leadership and engagement to drive a project forward. What they do is they kick it off, they cut the ribbon, and then they walk away, and they want to know what happens, but they really don't. They don't want to get their hands dirty anymore. That's somebody else's job. And if they're going to lead, they've got to roll up the sleeves. They've got to get right in there shoulder to shoulder with the people doing the work. They need to know who their team is. And that is key, because as a team member who works for that executive sees that they're that involved, they can't not be involved. They have to do their part, because leadership is demonstrating that it's that important to them. So they've got to fulfill their own role. And by doing so, their peers will see the way they operate, and they'll reflect the same type of attitude, and they'll adjust the same way, and they'll get on board. They'll do what they need to do to make it successful.
So we're hearing motivation and we're hearing attitude. So it's about this sounds very squishy to me about how an organization can protect itself from failure. But you talked openly at the beginning about willingness to change even. So is there no systems method for seeing this? What's the systems engineering look on this?
Well, I think, yeah, there are methods and processes that you could wrap around it, but just from the human standpoint, change management, if it's effectively applied, will take a project that has about a 14% success rate and drive it up into the 85 to 95% range, which is 6 times more likely to be successful by applying good change management practices, which are the foundation of communication, getting the team involved, understanding what that goal is, and then coaching them and mentoring them through that entire process, and providing rewards incrementally along the way, so that they know that they're being recognized for the work that they're doing. And what it does is that makes them embrace that success, and they hate the failure. And because of those types of motivations, you really see them do the right things. They do uncommon things, which might not have been expected for those here.
I'm sorry, I just lost you a little bit on the end there, but one of the things that you've got me thinking then when you just went there is that the role of kind of using the hierarchy or the power relationships, that when the leader has set both, you said a tone, but also that does recognition. Is this an issue then about how we coach and mentor? Is that where you're headed? That if it's all about willingness, attitude, motivation, how the leader first looks at the problem to begin with, willingness to change. Is this around how we get people mentored into that, or is it a training problem? Oh, I see your picture, but I don't hear your word. Oh, I may have lost time.
No, I think it's not a training, really. It's not a motive, and it's Yep. Hold on. Can you hear me now, Kel?
Gotcha. Well, I had you. Yep. Oh, I think I've lost you.
Okay. Yep. I think I just changed. I went from one tower to the next. It's not about training. It's about mentoring and the building that camaraderie amongst the team. And as a good example, the project I'm on now, it's a global implementation, and there's 272 consultants engaged on this project right now. It's a 5-year project, and I'm involved in the training team. So I'm actually building early training materials, editing videos, a variety of things, driving both communications, early awareness on how this new application is going to change their world, and to give them that early taste of what that's like. But the group I work in is the person I report to sees me as his peer, not as someone who works for him. And that in itself enables me to do what I need to do with very little repercussions. As long as I'm doing the right thing for the right reasons, it's okay to fail. Just don't fail too often.
So what I'm hearing underlying that then is trust. Is this an issue of how people establish trust? And we're really not talking about why projects fail, it sounds like, as much as how to inoculate them against failure. A, is trust relevant in a meaningful way as a business driver here, or a good hygiene?
I would say so. No, I would say so. And if you think about it, if you didn't trust someone, would you want them on your team? Would you want them involved on a project that you need to be successful? I think that's almost a given, and it's almost got to be something that's demanded of the individuals that are on the team.
Is this like a supply chain of trust then? Like it cascades to that hierarchy? Like, I know I'm getting it from you because you're getting it?
Yeah, and not only the trust, but if I'm demonstrating the right behavior and my peers around me aren't, but they see me doing it, they're going to be pressured into doing the same thing. So the peer pressure can be an unspoken tool, and if they see that I'm trusting the leadership team to make sure that they're clearing all the roadblocks for me, and I'm doing what I need to do, they're going to have some faith in me, my peers, and they're going to trust that I'm doing the right thing, and therefore they shall demonstrate those same behaviors. And if they don't, they're going to stand out in a bad way.
Well, I'm gonna get ready to segue to our next guest with this question, but I want your take on it first, all on your isolated lonesome here. If we were looking at a project life cycle within an organization, are you able to estimate, guess, pinpoint, or suggest that there's a part of the life cycle that is more at risk for triggering failure? And failure defined as not meeting scope, cost, or schedule, not providing value to those that invested in the project. Is there a space that we should watch more or less, or is that not a relevant question?
Well, I think project's got to get off the ground in the right way. But even if it doesn't, it's got the opportunity to recover. I would say once you get about a third of the way into the project, you potentially, if you get too far off track, you may not be able to recover. And not only that, but you may, by doing what is needed to try to recover, you may destroy the inner morale of the team and their spirit to get things done. You might abuse them to a point where you can never recover that, even after you tried to work the horse a little too much, and there's nothing left. There's nothing but glue that's left.
Yeah, well, that's interesting then. And so, have you been able to consult to enable that to not happen? Is that a space you've been able to lay into? Like, how do we get around that problem?
I haven't done a whole lot in that space. Usually, I've been on projects that were chasing success as opposed to trying to get ahead of it. But I would say there's been a few opportunities. This project I'm on right now is a good example of that. A lot of good groundwork, a lot of team building, a lot of relationship building, and proper introductions to the right people, and an understanding of everyone's roles. It's demonstrating that if we do the right things early on, we can avoid a lot of those pitfalls that most projects do encounter.
Yeah, so we're back up to the soft skills, and you also said most projects. We know that most projects do have a problem with getting to the investment value, and certainly within the time frame that people had wanted. So let me bring up Carl Pritchard here. Any of you who've been in a chapter probably know Carl Pritchard because he's been around PMI and these questions of project forever. He's Mr. Risk, which is why I think we wanted to bring him up, because you're talking failure, you're talking risk. There must be risk of success. Now I got to tell you, Carl's been on at least 2 of my podcast episodes, and will forever be kept warm in my heart, because he got on and talked about PMBOK 6 and used the word propinquity and said it just like that. Actually, nobody says it like Carl. So go and listen to an episode on risk with Carl on propinquity, because only PMI could come up with a word like that as a way of helping us to understand projects better, of course, right, Carl?
Absolutely.
So
You know,
Carl's a fun guy.
yeah, it
But
is. And you know what? Before you go any further, just to make a point that a lot of the things that he was just talking about, that Tom was just talking about, go to propinquity. They actually do. How much does management care? How much do they really truly care? That's what propinquity is all about. How deeply are they invested?
are
So,
they
yeah, there you go,
adjacent
Jeff. I
to you?
answered your question. Propinquity is how much do people genuinely, in their heart of hearts,
Yeah.
care? Yeah. So,
Well, you're the only person that can turn risk into caring and fun. I know that. He's got a bio that I'm not going to bother read because it's so long and so much is involved with it. But the best part I heard about was that you just finished a 12-year project.
oh yeah,
Yeah,
my
tell us
12-year
about that
project.
12-year project.
My 12-year project was to lose 100 pounds. That was
Did
my.
you do it by gaining 2 and losing 2 and gaining 2 and losing 2? That meant?
That was how it started.
What's our sample? What's our sample here?
Yeah, but no, it was. You can just start me out at 283 pounds, and just work my way down from there. And the beauty is, I'm buying clothes like nobody's business. So.
Well, we actually want to make this into what we're actually talking about, but I think it's real. This is the whole point about True Talks here. We can talk project management in just a second, but how does your background and your leadership, actually, your thought leadership in risk, how did that play into you making a personal decision on something like that?
Well, it all does tie together. In fact, I've done podcasts on just that, which is the whole notion of how how do you do a 12-year project? And I think it ties to where I wanted to go today when we're talking about why projects fail.
Bring it on.
And yeah, and it ties directly into this because projects fail in my mind in a lot of ways because of a lack of consistency.
Hmm.
There's a lack of consistency. Yeah, you have to have like a and dare to say a religion that I am going to follow this. I'm going to follow this every single day. I'm going to be the same guy today, tomorrow, a week from now, all of that. It's a function of that's where I am. That's how I'm going to function. And sadly, organizations fail miserably at this. And this is where in listening to Tom, it's where he and I actually agreed because and I don't necessarily love the way Tom framed it here when he said, quote, they're going to be pressured into doing the same thing. And people shouldn't need to be pressured into doing the same thing. People should simply look and say, that is something that is attractive to me. And basically, it's the laws of attraction. I look at that, I see something that I appreciate, and that just kind of draws me in. That's what should be happening. And it should be happening at a project manager level where we're doing things so consistently, so well that people are looking at us going, oh, I want to be more like her. I want to be more like him. And that's going to happen if we're able to kind of illustrate and show that we are indeed consistent.
So why do you pick on that? So that's interesting. That's actually a subjective belief that consistency itself is valuable. Hence, people would say, "I love it because I'm seeing it." What is it about consistency that you're saying that stops project failure? And I'm not trying to be cute here. We've just heard, and we have often talked, the need for adaptability and change management.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we all know it. We've all read the books. What is going on that projects fail in a world where we're all trained in consistency stuff and we all talk about it's the soft skills and change management? What's going wrong here?
Well, I think the problem is when you're talking things like change management, people have this nasty habit of, oh, well, we can agile. Let's talk agile for a second. In fact, I'm trying to see if you can actually see this behind me on my wall. Oh, look, it's a sprint, and it's a bunch of user stories hanging on his wall. How nifty is that? Yeah.
And that's just for dinner or what? What's that?
Yeah, that's actually for a whole nother project, a client project. But it goes to a point. It's a matter of organizations look at Agile and say, we can do anything. We can do anything. And the reality is, no, you can't do anything. You can do anything that the process allows. And if we follow the process and we follow it consistently, it has a drawing power. It has an attractive power in that it actually pulls us in closer and gives us a sense of, oh, this is meaningful. And it becomes more meaningful, and projects are less likely to fail if people know what to expect. It's when we get nailed, and I am the master of the unexpected because that's what risk is all about. But people fail when they don't handle the unexpected the same way every single time. When people don't handle their projects the same way, there is a need for that consistency. And it's interesting because Harry went into the dictionary and said the state of being close to someone or something, proximity. And if you actually look at the etymology of propinquity, and yeah, I'm an etymology freak. I love digging up the etymology of words. And what's intriguing is the essence of propinquity is exactly the definition, state of being close to someone. It's actually the state of wanting to be close to someone. And there's a nuanced difference there. But when PMI is talking about propinquity, you're talking about management. Do you want them to want your project? Do you want them? I want you to want me. Yeah,
Well,
I mean,
you
that's
and
what we're
Tom are
looking
singing
at.
the same song there with that, in the sense that there's an element of motivation that appears for both of you. Seem to be positioning that motivation matters,
Yeah,
and that you're suggesting the way people are motivated by their essentially desire, practice, which you said is linked to the fact that they see something that's bouncing around there. Maybe Tom actually, that they see standardization or consistency that matters to them. So PMs are definitely trained in this, and we still see the problem. Talk to me about then, from the motivation perspective, the role of participating. Is this the idea that it's handled, that I need to commit to it? Like, how does this work from a participatory perspective?
well, I teach a lot of PMP prep,
Mm,
and the new PMP exam is very hot
do
on,
tell.
and justifiably so, servant leadership.
Uh-huh.
And you're talking about what level of participation we should have, what level of involvement we should have in the day to day. And I think the idea that PMI has just kind of glommed onto servant leadership is actually a really good thing. I think that's a real positive. I think it's a plus because servant leadership, the whole idea of my job is to enable your job. My job is to make you happier in your day to day, more, and I'm sorry, not happier, more functional in your day to day. I don't
Hmm.
want you sitting around wrestling with roadblocks. Today, my wife was wrestling with her bicycle. Yeah, I'm not, I don't make this crap up. I honestly don't. My
Hey,
lovely
we've
wife,
got an
Nancy,
expert. We've got an expert on bicycling in Tom. So yeah, go ahead, do
okay,
tell.
but my lovely wife, Nancy, who is a goddess to be worshiped, just got a new bike. And this is her first time going back into bicycling in 25, 30 years. So it's been a long time. And of course, what's the first thing she did today when she was out on her own? She dropped her chain. Yeah, the chain fell off her bike. So she had no idea how to put that chain back on. And this is the whole servant leadership thing. It was a matter of she got the bike home in her van. She got home and said, "Oh, I'm ready to give up." And I said, "No." I said, here's how you put the chain back on." And it's the whole teach a man to fish kind of thing. And yeah, you should be looking at this from that kind of perspective. I like Greg Olson's comment here because he said servant leadership is basic leadership versus management. It is. It is how we can lead without all this touchy feely, and you were talking about it, soft skills, which quite frankly, I'm not enamored of. I've never been a soft skills, mushy kind of guy. But at the same time, I don't see servant leadership that way. I see that as hard leadership. You get in there, you teach a person to fish. That's a whole different story than
Yeah,
giving
you
them a
both
fish.
are hitting. You both are hitting on the need for coaching. It sounds like the idea that it is modeled or in some way sheltered and instructed. But let me go to some questions. Harry just sent a note that there's a couple questions in there. Harry, do you have one that's a question that we can toss up? And Tom, feel free to come back on board here. What do you got there? What do you want to read to us here?
Yeah, I think one was a comment about planning, how important planning is to project success. Could you speak to that?
Yeah, I think planning is servant leadership. It genuinely is.
Oh, you have got to connect those two dots because those are just
Yeah.
words put together.
It's well, no, I'm saying it's crystal clear because it's a matter of if you know precisely where something is going, you can dive in hands first. A lot of you got into project management because you were the technical whiz kid. Oh, how nice to be you. But if you're willing to bite your tongue and actually enable somebody else to do this stuff, then you win. Then they win. And the beauty of it is because you're the one who's actually facilitating this. You're the one who's making it all possible. You're the one who's outlining, wait, the plan on how to accomplish this. Because you're the one who's doing that. One, you're a servant leader. Two, you're teaching somebody else how to do their job effectively. Oh, wait, but you're teaching them how to do it the Harry way, the Maggie way, the Greg way. And the beauty of that is you get to leave an indelible imprint on an organization. The sad thing is many of us don't see it that way. My mission every time I go into a client, every time I have dealt with any employer throughout my entire career, I want to leave a mark. I really do. And not like, ow, that's going to leave a mark. Not that kind of mark. I want to leave a mark where people go, wow, hey, that was Carl Pritchard's thing back when he was here. Boom. Everybody wins.
Yep. Well, let me hold on that for a second because the question was around planning. Actually, Harry, do you have another question in there? Because I want to get to Tom here too.
Yeah, I think it's more of a comment about collaborative leadership, and Jonah in particular is advocating for collaborative leadership. Can you maybe just describe the difference between collaborative leadership versus servant leadership?
Well, that's an interesting question. Is that relevant difference, Carl? And then Tom.
I honestly, it's a matter of semantics.
Okay.
But I think how people actually act on it could be significant. And that is collaborative leadership is about, come on, get over here. Come on, get closer. Group hug. Let's do this. Yeah. But that's collaborative. It is one of those things we're all working together to come up with good ideas. Frankly, I would much rather enable my team to come up with a good idea, to point them and just nudge them in the right direction to get there.
Tom, collaborative, servant, role planning. How do we inoculate?
I would just say, in regard to Carl's comments, I would agree with what he said. The most important thing is through servant leadership, you enable them as opposed to collaborative as a leader. You really want your team to be collaborative amongst themselves, and you want to be the person who's clear on the road. So Carl, definitely, I would side with you on that. And just a comment when when I was talking about peer pressure, I was talking about your own internal peer pressure, where you feel that because everyone else is doing the right thing, that you need to as well. It's not so much the outside world is pressuring you; it's that internal drive that makes you realize that you're not doing the right thing and that you have to come on board.
Got it. Well, actually, you just got something I want to shift the conversation to a little bit. So for both of you to listen up on this part. So sometimes things go wrong and failure is about to happen. Tom, you talked about there's a point of no return, or you implied there was a point of no return the ability to recover. Carl, you come at it from a risk, or can come at it very much from a risk perspective, which I know is a dirty word, or not. So given that we eat risk for breakfast if we're a project manager, and we plan for it consistently, and the things you've talked about, let's talk about when a project starts to go wrong. The role of resilience, the role of resistance, the role of being able to respond to things when they're going wrong, because project failure is, in my mind, always about to happen. So once it's triggered, what is the ways that we can be thinking about responding to things when they've gone wrong to save it from failing?
And this goes back to one of my standard shticks, and that is, I'm a big advocate of something that is just a fundamental risk management, and that is know thy tolerance. Know where the line is that you won't cross. And most organizations don't do this well, because they'll get down, it's a $5 million project. They've spent $4.5 million so far. And somebody comes in and goes, well, you know, we're going to need another $1.5 million to finish this. And tolerance, the point beyond which we will not go. And unfortunately, people see us, project managers, waffle on this. They do. They'll see us go, well, I'll go grovel for another $1.5 million. Bag that. We should have been screaming bloody murder when we were overrun back at $3 million, and we shouldn't have waited this far down the road. And that's pet peeve number one. The other side of that is, when it comes to tolerances, know that there is a time when you say, hey boss, I've been looking at this project and it's dead now. Yeah, we should be and why do projects fail? People look at that as a failure. I don't. One of my peers and one of our peers, and you guys, I'm sure, know who this, you'll recognize the name as soon as I say it, Lee Lambert. Lee Lambert actually had a project where he got hired in as a consultant. He went in and they said, we need you to rescue it. He went in and said, can't be rescued. It's dead. And they said, no, we're going to pay you big money to come in and rescue it. And he said, no, you're not understanding me. It's dead. And he said, here, look, clear. Poof, there, it's dead. Yeah, there's nothing going to save this project. They fired him. They had spent $500 million and were ready to throw money at Lee hand over fist to rescue it. He didn't get. Now, just to end here,
are we dealing with the fact that people just live in? We've got them all in positive attitude. Is this a problem where? Is this magical thinking, wishful thinking?
Yeah, I think the trick though is you've got to know where the line is drawn. And Lee loves bragging about the fact that they went on, hired a different consultant, spent another $500 million, and finally killed the project. Lee says they listened to me in the first place. I could have saved them $500 million. But it goes back to the whole notion of, hey, if we know where the lines are drawn, we are being, and it goes back to my original words, consistent. We're being consistent about our behaviors when it comes to this. Unfortunately, when it comes to tolerances, a lot of organizations aren't consistent. And in my mind, for a lot of organizations, that's why projects fail. You kill a project early, that project succeeded. You kill a project late, that project failed.
That's going to be interesting for a lot of us listening, to be able to describe to executives that I've just made this project work because we've stopped the project. It sounds like there's some words that we need in there at some level. But holding that aside for a second, Tom, what's your response to that, this idea that consistency?
Well, it's funny, just a couple of weeks ago, I wrote an article about knowing when to change project direction. And that is exactly the situation. Sometimes the project, the original goals are no longer viable. Let's say a competitor solved the problem that you were trying to solve, and now you're going to be an also ran and way behind, and you're never going to be the leader, and you needed to have changed directions. Other than that, you might have had poor planning and and poor approach, and you had spent enough money that anything after that is just bad money, and you need to change direction. And to Carl's point, that's probably the way you catch it early. Is you go ahead and you're tracking as time goes on, and you're always measuring where you are relative to what your spend or your progress should be. And you need to find out early when you're getting off track and make those incremental adjustments, not wait for some quarterly or annual event to say, geez, hey, we're way over budget and we're way behind schedule, when there's no more time to do anything to correct it.
So back for my first comment to you, or question to you, was how would you know if an organization is set up to produce project failures? And your response was willingness to change, the signal for willingness to change. So I took that as kind of the change management conversation. We went down that road. But what I'm hearing that you're both seeming to agree on is there's at least some element that the organizational affect that is saying we are willing to change. Now I'm hearing planning and consistency will help you have insight into that, is the key way that we can stop projects from failing, which includes knowing when to pull the kill switch, change direction, even all the way up to hitting the kill switch, is kind of how I'm seeing what you're both saying here right now, is that this willingness to pivot when needed.
I would, yes, I would agree with that. But also I would lean heavily on the ability to motivate the team to make good on what that project goal is. They go, I don't want to say hand in hand, but they really do. There's those two parts. You've got to have good tracking and accountability, but you've got to have a motivated team to be able to get the work done.
Carl, talk to me about facing the issues of risk. So am I in a situation where I need, you've referred to some of your writing as a risk zealots.
Yeah. And I think, the zealotry actually comes with tolerances. It's staggering to me that organization after organization, and if you're looking for the other kind of buzzword that comforts people in all this, it's governance. Whoa. This is all about governance. And the beauty of good governance is, and this is going to seem almost oxymoronic, good governance is good servant leadership. It's where you are able to actually get crap out of the way. You're able to say, this is crap that needed to be removed and gotten out of the way. And you're also going to facilitate and enable the people who are doing the work to know. And one of my least favorite words in the entire world, empowerment. I hate that word. I really do. And the reason I hate the word empowerment is people will always say, Tom, I need you to empower the team. And it's like, what a pile of crap. The reality is, if you want to empower your team, you let them know, here's the world, here's the boundary, here's the absolute limits. And you've got to understand it like flipping Diogenes. For those of you who don't know who Diogenes was, Greek philosopher, Diogenes was notorious for somebody would ask him a question and he would give them a very simple answer, and he would always do this. He would always cup his hands. He'd cup his hands and they go, why are you doing that? And he said, this is my world. This is the world I understand. This is what I can get done. This is the universe. And he would cup his hands and he would do that. And Diogenes, for those of you who don't know his claim to fame, the quest for the honest person. But Diogenes would cup his hands and say, that's as much of the universe as I understand. And I think, regrettably, a lot of organizations are not willing to admit, this is it. This is what we really get. This is what we understand. This is where our boundary should be. Oh, and our tolerances should be when it comes to governing a project or comes to running a project.
I'm hearing boundaries, clarification, and wow, we just walked back to scope, if only at the organizational level. Did we just go back to PMBOK 1? What are we going to do? There's not anything to test anyone on if we just get back to scope again. So how does the role of Tom, actually, you've probably experienced this as well. So agile, risk, scope, there's different ways of approaching it. How does that look from what you guys are seeing in project failure? How does agile differ and how it can set us up for failure? We've got that one last question before we pick up from Harry. Tom.
I would say how does Agile empower us or set us up for failure? I think a lot of it is people understanding that it is okay to not know everything you need to know up front to create a product. That it's okay to evolve, to build building blocks, step by step, incremental, to be able to, if you're building an application, first start by building what does the user screen look like and agree on that and make sure you have all the basic components. Another step might be developing the interface to be able to save the data that you put into that interface. A lot of people aren't comfortable with that, but the beauty of it is it allows you to not try to define what the end goal is when you don't know what that entire user experience is going to be. And to me, having people not comfortable with that is a risk and an impediment to be successful.
Mm. Okay, so there's we're back to a motivation and an attitude. So if we're in an agile environment, we'd better get that kind of attitudinal adjustment, that positioning adjustment, to be able to help inoculate ourselves from the failure, right? The willingness to adapt again. Carl, what are you thinking in terms of how a classically PMBOK approach, a waterfall structured approach versus maybe an agile or other approaches affect our focus on project failure, affect our probabilities of project failure?
Look at, here you go. You made mention of it. PMBOK 1. Yeah.
He's got one.
Take a picture. I own the last copy ever of PMBOK 1.
All 73 pages, right? It wasn't very big, as I remember.
No, it's thin as can be. And look at the Agile Practice Guide. They both preach the same gospel. Break things down into, and the operative word is always manageable chunks. Manageable chunks. And the word manageable matters because it's a matter of, can you actively get your team members to manage those chunks? Notice what I didn't say. Can you actively manage those chunks? Get your team members to manage them. Allow them to grow. Let them evolve through that. But it's always a matter of getting down to something you can actually wrap your hands around and wrap your arms around. That's where I'm back to Diogenes, and I think the guy was right. Ancient Greek, but I still think he's right. It is a function of actually knowing just what's the universe? How big is it? And having a clear sense, if you don't know what the universe is, oh, that's stuff that's outside that universe. And somebody said in the chat, knowing scope is great, but equally important is what's not in scope. Yeah, if you don't know, you don't know, but admit you don't know.
Yep. Harry, do we have any other questions left out? We got time to pick up one real quick.
I think we've covered most of there's some comments about communication. I think maybe the question is, what role does communication play in project success or failure for that matter?
Well, we've been talking a lot about servant leadership, the need to have people excited and willing to participate. So I'm assuming we're back to communications, one of the main jobs that we as project managers can do. Are we comfortable with that one?
I think so. I think a big part of it though is your communications can't be, well, some of us can't and probably won't. Part of your communications has to be that energy, that zeal, that enthusiasm that you bring to the project. When people are talking to you about your project, you darn well ought to be able to look like, you know what, this is the best thing ever. It really is. And the more we can get people to that kind of an attitude, rah. I do think it matters.
Yeah, I think in addition to that, it's important that the frequency of the communication, the specific message at the right time, delivered to the right people is critical as well. It's not just starting off early with communications, repeating the same thing over and over. It's an evolving and focused activity. And within the change management area, that is probably the biggest factor of success in how well they communicate, identifying the audience, identifying their needs. There's a lot of work that goes on there. And it's funny, a lot of people do refer to it as soft skills, but it really does have a methodology, and it it is every bit as, though they do lack the structure that PMI has set up, but the change practice itself, as it gets more integrated with PMI, will have that evolve within that content. And that's going to be critical, because a lot of people think it's just, even those in change think it's just soft skills and they wing it, when there really is a lot of structure to be taken advantage of.
And just, I think Beth May wins the award for best conversion of a topic. She said power skills in the chat.
Sounds
Nice.
like a topic for our next True Talks, which was what are the power skills? But part of what I'm hearing you guys saying is about getting people to be excited and willing to see that it can be successful. I one time heard someone make a reference that the saying is I'll believe it when I see it. But what I'm hearing you guys say, and what this person had suggestion is, no, the way it really works is we see it, success, when we believe it. That, in other words, you have to have a sense of what it is and that you're willing to be there. So in fact, I'll see it when I believe it. So we have to believe first, which is interesting. I had not expected our risk guru to come in here and talk to us about feelings. Nothing more than feelings. Well, okay, it may be more than feelings, but it includes feelings and the communication thereof. So gentlemen, last words on what someone can walk away from tonight when they walk into their organization tomorrow and be thinking, I want to add one pebble to the wall of protecting us from failure. What's a thing a human, right now our hands are in this group of people I see here, can do tomorrow?
I would say, don't be afraid to take charge, to step up, to take ownership of a situation. In most cases, that's what determines within a group who is the leader. It's who's willing to step up, and you have to be willing to do that, and that will excite the rest of those folks around you to do the same.
Yep, saying I've had is, you know what happens with leaders? Leaders lead. You have to do it. Carl, one thing people on this call can take tomorrow, add a little brick in the wall.
And this is going to sound like I'm talking against myself, but empower your team.
Oh,
And yeah, just when I said I hate that word, but it is. It's a matter of go back tomorrow and identify just two little things that you see as, here are the boundaries, here are the limits, and here are the opportunities that are associated with knowing that you have those limits. If they know where the lines are, if they know what your governance is, if they know what you're willing to accept and when you're going to freak out on them, you've actually done them a huge favor, because what you've done is you've clarified, this is what I consider to be a risk to the project or a threat to the project, and this is what I don't.
I love the two lenses that I've heard from you guys here. One is project manager as a servant leader to those that they are enabling to do things. And the other one that you just referred to is, and you both have earlier, is how we communicated up to those that have the investment in the project itself. So we've actually, oddly, without any structure, managed to hit up and down, kind of both directions. Yes, Beth, Turn the Ship Around, Leadership Ladder is an excellent book, and has a great story behind it. I highly recommend that one, as well as Anti-Fragility, I think is another one. It's about the recovery these things. So, but with that, we're about to have to wrap up in 3 minutes, and we've got some stuff about PDU. So right before that, Tom, how do people get hold of you? Where do they follow you? Is it on LinkedIn? What's the place to know what's up in the Tom Gray world?
If you want to find out what's going on, you can go to LinkedIn and look for Your PMI Guy. That's my handle that I have on there. And you can see Your PMI Guy, and you will see a number of articles that I have. I've got right now 90 articles that are posted. I've got 10 more that are coming, and that should finish up the top 100. And then I'm going to take a hiatus and get that book together.
And they cover a wide range of topics, as I remember. Okay, excellent. Thank you. Carl, how do people find out about the Carl Magic? Your risk?
It is my name, Carl Pritchard.
Take a screenshot.
If they go to LinkedIn, they'll find me by looking up Carl Pritchard. If they send me an email, it's carl@carlpritchard.com. If they want to go to my website, it's carlpritchard.com.
Thank you, gentlemen, for giving us your thoughts tonight and also being willing to play off on each other's and reflect on each one of them. Marina, I have you hiding back in the wings I see over there. Tell them how they're going to get their PDUs and what we need to know about this.
Will do. Thank you, Kendall. Thank you, Carl and Tom, for this wonderful, wonderful talk show tonight. And let's see what's coming up next for our attendees. So, as I said, look out for the PDU card that you'll receive after the talk show. Please take the survey, give us your feedbacks. And also, we have a couple events coming up. May 27th, we have our book club meeting. Take a look, go on our website at pmisomb.org. We have an Agile Essentials class on July 14th. So you have plenty of time to sign up for the class with Alan Zucker. And our True Talks will also be back in July 2021. So a few exciting events for you to check out in these next couple months. I thank you everybody for attending tonight. Thank you for being with us, and join us again in July when we'll be talking. I'll give you a peek on the topic about globalization and project management. Thank you everybody, and good night.